Hey, Pike. Welcome back. How are you?
Ah, man, this week. Uh, uh, I'm good, but I'm also sad because a bunch of my students graduated this week from my junior high school, and then tomorrow I have my elementary school students. A bunch of them are graduating from the elementary school. So yeah,
That's nice. Although I
yeah.
literally just, when you were saying that, and I remember this when you were telling me this, I was remembering that one line from The Incredibles where it's like, he's not graduating, he's moving from one grade to the next grade. Do you remember that
Well,
line?
no, no, no. Yes,
I know
I
in this one,
know.
I know there that's closer to graduation. I just, when you told me that, that's all I thought of. Because, like,
Yeah, well, in the
for,
case of the, remember, go ahead, go ahead.
no, I was just saying in that situation that was like that was Mr. Incredible kind of being like irreverent towards like a family member's like his son's accomplishments, right? Like the mom wants to celebrate the accomplishment and the dad's like, "Oh, it's asinine," or he says something about it. But yeah.
Yeah, because it's only from like fourth to fifth grade, and it's really not a big change. Now if it's like okay, if you're in a school that goes first to sixth grade, which is what my students do, and they're like I'm talking specifically about my sixth graders at the elementary school. They're graduated. They're going to all be going to different middle schools, and then my junior high school students. So everyone, remember, I teach in Japan. You are not technically required to go to high school, like what we would call like high school, senior high school here in Japan. Now, most people do these days, but it used to not be as common. And there's an interesting fact here, Holics, that you might enjoy. This is why characters like Yusuke Urameshi and Yu Yu Hakusho and Kuwabara, they're portrayed as 14 and like in their last year of junior high school, because as delinquents, it would kind of be assumed like, yeah, they're kind of dumb and they're not going to get into any high schools. They're going to go straight to work. So it's like, yeah, that's why a lot of older anime are actually set in middle school rather than like in junior high school rather than senior high school. Just
Okay.
an
I mean,
interesting
that's kind of
fact.
that's a little interesting fact that has nothing to do with what we normally talk about, but I still find it interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, but it has been a quite a week. But fortunately, we are reviewing what is. I think this might supplant. Uh, well, what was? You see, I need to remember the name of the episode. This might presently supplant The Forsaken as my favorite episode that we've watched so far on this rewatch.
Hmm.
Because this is Rules of Acquisition, heavy Ferengi based episode, and honestly, kind of an amazing episode. Only one plot, no B plot, and it is like I mean, I was halfway through the episode and I was like, we've done so much, and I only want more.
Hmm.
So it's such a great episode. We get a lot of Ferengi rules of acquisition, learn a lot about their culture, and I'm not gonna lie, we get a lot of phenomenal character work from Quark. I do have maybe one major issue when it comes to Quark in this, in part because like I feel like they dumb Quark down a little bit. Quark is meant to kind like it's sometimes difficult to see because he's often portrayed as a little bit of a comedic character, but
Hmm.
he is meant to be like a smart guy. He's meant to be a great businessman. He is in many ways the archetypical Ferengi. Uh, and that
Hmm.
character trait is very interesting because he's put in a lot of situations where archetypical Ferengi are not really meant to be put in. And, we get a good insight into their culture while a great insight into a character. But in this episode, he comes across as like, how are you successful at all? Like, people consider Quark a successful Ferengi, more or less. Like, there's people who don't like him, but everyone sort of regards him as like, you've done well here, Quark. Like, the Grand Nagus has taken particular note of Quark's work, right? If that's nothing else
Hmm.
saying that he is a good businessman within his own people, then, like, that's like, that's like the defining thing. So, throughout most of this episode, the titular character of Pell kind of like overshadows him in a way that makes him look very dumb. It's like, well, you know what people say about like Wesley Crusher from the next generation, where one of the issues with his character is not necessarily that he's so smart, but that other characters are oftentimes dumbed down to make him seem smart.
Hmm.
So that's kind of a little
Uh,
bit what happens here, but it's not done terribly. It's just it's kind of annoying to see. But otherwise, this is a phenomenal episode. And yeah, I mean, I mean, we could probably get right into it. Do you have anything like you don't have to read off like the little fun facts you're reading, but like we can get to those when they're sort of pertinent. But anything else you sort of want to say before we sort of dive right into the episode?
uh, is there anything pertinent? Nothing I can't bring up. I mean, this is actually kind of our first time going into detail about the Gamma Quadrant in like actual detail of like who's out there. Like
Oh yeah, this is
what? I mean, there.
this is we've mentioned it before. This is the first time the Dominion's mentioned.
Yeah, like we've been to the Gamma Quadrant before, but they've been just like, oh, like sort of like TNG episode where it's like we stopped off of this weird planet. This is the first time we're actually going to be building out the lore for what the Gamma Quadrant will be, like going forward. Um, and I mean, I guess this is the best time to do it because I remember last season you had issues with the fact of like it didn't feel like they built out enough of the Bajoran issues of the relationships between the provisional government, the religious authorities, the military, all that, and
Hmm.
then we had the season finale, which was a attempted assassination of Belial, and then the three-parter, which dealt with um all like basically
Yeah,
the
the coup.
attempted coup by yeah by basically ultra nationalists, or would it still be ultra nationalist? Like, would that be the term
Uh,
we would use?
yeah, I mean, it's the Star Trek sci-fi future where all planets are sort of unified as like a singular entity. The
Mhm.
like you're from Earth, right? No one really cares that you're an American from Earth, right? There's not really an America per se, other than that's the geological area, right? It's kind of
Mhm.
like I'd imagine it's something closer to the realm of like countries are more or less what like the states within the United States are, which is like you are these smaller governments that fall under this larger banner, but you do have some self governance. You do have like, yeah, we pass our own rules and laws relating to us, but there's also like the world government. So, if we're talking about when it comes to the Bajorans particularly, it would be something that's like hyper nationalist in terms of like, except I guess their term would be like planetarian, like or something like that, like hyper
Yeah.
planetarian, like but Bajor for Bajorans, like it's all we're not letting other people like use our area, territory, whatever. But in all fairness, like what it would ultimately probably be closer to, especially if you're a multi-planet species, is it would result back to what your species is, right? It's like we are Bajoran. If you are not Bajoran with us, then you are not like we don't want you on our planets, plural, right? It'd be less so about the physical land you possess and more so about the cultural something that unifies you as a culture, which the most unifying thing would be your species, right? So
Mhm.
but it's interesting you sort of talk about that because again we talk a lot about the Ferengi here, and there's a lot I wanted to talk about. And I remember telling you I'd gotten into discussions with some people about like Starship Troopers and like why
Mhm.
a lot of people don't get Starship Troopers, because the reason I think a lot of people don't get Starship Troopers is the same reason why people like the Cardassians and why people like the Ferengi is like simply depicting something as bad, like simply depicting something as like a quote unquote satire of like what's bad. Like for example, you could argue very strongly that the Ferengi are satirical of capitalism, right? They
Mhm.
are hyper capitalist. They are super like all about profit. There's all like almost every trait the Ferengi have are bad, but kind of the problem is like the Ferengi have one of the longest standing empires within the Star Trek setting, right? I believe it's older than even the Vulcans. So there's an argument that can now be made of like you're trying to satirize like capitalism and show look how bad the Ferengi are. You don't want to be like the Ferengi, right? It's like I don't know, man. Sometimes you depict the Ferengi as like really interesting and really cool, but not even just that, but like
Yeah.
also successful at what they do. So, and I mean, we're gonna get into it because there's a lot of talk about how Ferengi view gender dynamics, and spoiler alert, Ferengi are like hyper sexist.
Yeah. So
But it's
I
it's it's
do
like
kind
yeah, go on.
I I do want to push back. So satire does not need to exclude showing maybe some of the benefits or like the advantages of the system. It needs to basically the idea is satire is highlighting the absurdities prominently to expose the flaws of the system. Now, it can also show some of the benefits of it, because like generally speaking, I would say like yeah, I can see like I can see why the Cardassians like based on what we learn about them, why their system work, why it is good. And they don't really go out of their way to make fun of it. Instead, they kind of like like show the implicit like yes, you get your security and such from the system, but when you, like the stories we have that focus on that system, we see the sacrifices that are made for it. And then the Ferengi is like again, like it's kind of like a lot of time when they do satirize something with them, it like I would say like while there's comedic bits and most Ferengi episodes, there's usually like a split between the serious like, hey, we're actually going to tackle what they're doing, what their system, and like the drama that can emerge in that, socially. Versus, yeah, there's a comedic episode. This is just a comedic bit, right?
No, sure. Like
Like
obviously with Star Trek, it's over a longer period of time. But I guess like to push back, I mean, I'm just gonna sort of like look at the wiki for it. You know, satire is used to show off like the vices, follies, abuses, and shortcomings, holding them up to ridicule, often with the intent of exposing, shaming the perceived flaws of individuals, corporations, government, society itself, and pushing it towards improvement. Now, I'm not saying like, oh, if not everything about something is bad, it's not satire, but like to that end, right? When you show a system or a group here, right, the Ferengi as a group, when you show their flaws, their merits, how they succeed, how they fail, when you paint like a thorough picture, it's kind of not satirizing anymore. It's kind of just you've just depicted a group of people, and guess what? People have flaws, right? Like any system in the modern world has flaws, but it also has merits, right? Like I wouldn't like look at China and say, see, China, it's a satire of communism, right? It's like, no, it's just China. It's you know, it has its own economic systems, it has its own views on all these things, and regardless of what you think about it, they're real people. They're not a joke, right? So
mhm,
satire is like a caricature, right? Is you're taking
mhm,
something and you're exploding up and highlighting its flaws to point out the issue. But the kind of the thing is like I don't know if you could say the Ferengi and Cardassians are satirical because they are so like detailed and like shown off. They're not like a caricature. They're like a still life painting of a real possible system that could exist in a sci-fi future. When you give
mhm,
them backstory and history, you know, again, I don't want to get talking about like Starship Troopers, but one of the problems is of like saying, "Oh, that's satire." Is like, I don't know. When you give enough detail showing something, it's like it can't become satirical anymore. It just becomes realistic, right?
mhm,
It's like it's sort of like satire is almost it hurts itself if it tells too much detail of itself because what you end up doing
mhm,
is saying no, there's positives and there's negatives. Now you know you could do something like Idiocracy, right, which satirizes like real life by basically making everyone like hyper dumb, and then you realize, oh, it didn't actually go far enough. You know, jokes like that aside, it's a matter of you're satirizing something by caricaturizing it in a way to make it understandable in a very simple way
mhm,
and understood in a very like uh like not simple but like you have to understand it in almost one way. There can't be too much nuance in something. If there's too much nuance, it loses its ability to be satire,
mhm.
you know, because now there's a discussion to be had. It's like it's not just satire. It's like maybe there's something to be said about like how the Ferengi run their economies. After all, one of the things that they try and use, again, another issue with using the Ferengi as like a model for satire parodying capitalism is a lot of times they try and use the Ferengi to beat down humanity in the sense of like we're going to criticize humanity and we're going to use this alien species to do it. So they say things like the Ferengi never had any wars. It's like, oh, wow, that sounds actually pretty good. Or like when they try and like have the when the Ferengi learn that humanity used nukes on itself, they're like stunned and shocked. Like, you detonated nuclear weapons in your atmosphere? And I'm like, huh. So now if the Ferengi are satire, why are they better than humans? Are we saying that humans are worse
Yeah.
than satire? Like, so it's like it's just one of those things where like the Ferengi in TNG were satire, right? They had no depth. They were, they would show up, they'd be like, we want to steal your females and all your profits. And then they act like little the way they would always like move around really weird and they had these energy whips that they would hit people with, but they were like very animalistic.
Yeah.
And then they would leave because they were
Yeah.
they were cartoon villains. They were satire there. Here it's like, no, Quark is a character with values and his own beliefs. And we'll get into that because I think this is like one of the strongest showings of Quark as a character. There's one line in particular that's like kind of amazing, and I had to like stop and pause and like think on it for a bit because I'm like, damn, that says everything about your character in just a single line. But we could start unless you have anything else you want to say about my stupid rant on satire.
The bugs deserved it.
Fair.
Literally, actually, yeah, I rewatched it recently, but I'm like, you know what, I want to, because it's in the zeitgeist. I'm like, yeah, I want to watch. Literally, it's not like it is so fucking
There's
hilarious. It's like,
look, there's a huge discussion to be had about Starship Troopers.
so no. The book itself, in the book, the bugs were actually like a pretty intelligent, like like in terms of like how we're intelligent. They use advanced technology and such, and there's actually an implicit debate of like, did the bugs actually or their allies attack us first, or did
No, yeah,
did
the
humans do it?
the,
Or
the, the big
but
discussion is like, was the initial attack like a false flag operation by humanity to justify a war? But the thing about the bugs, from what I recall in the books, is they are intelligent, but in a very different way than humans. They almost don't register humans as like an entity until we threaten them. It's interesting because like they're simultaneously very intelligent and capable of like using tools and technology. However, they're also very animalistic in the sense of like you are not like they don't look at us as a priority unless we get in their way, and then they treat us like prey or food, right? Meanwhile, the humans are. It's kind of characterizing an interesting concept of like the intelligent animal versus the intelligent human, because you have the animal which doesn't want to fight, doesn't want to make enemies. It just wants to kind of survive, and it does that by expanding. Right? It's like, oh, we're going to go to these other planets and we're going to colonize them, and we're going to like, make more babies, make more bugs, take over more planets. They're not even like they don't even like have this. They're intelligent, but they're not even thinking in terms of like, let's go make enemies. Meanwhile, humanity is like, these bugs are a potential enemy in the future. Let's deal with them now. And it's like, well, hold on, wait a minute. Maybe there's something to be said about picking fights, right? The book is a lot more nuanced when it comes to that sort of thing. The movie does actually like, play it up a little bit as like, again, this is a very long conversation about the nature of satire, and honestly it gets very political in how you view some of these things, so we're gonna have to like table that for a more detailed
we
conversation.
had to make an episode about Starship Troopers, the book in the movie.
No,
God.
we have to talk about Ferengi sexism today. That's what we're talking about. Last time we talked about like how handy capable people are. Now we're talking about how women can do things too.
Oh, no. I almost said no, and like, but which would be more like, no, you can't just
Say it that way.
just reduce. Yeah, you can't reduce it that far down. But then me saying no could be taken to be like, no, there as just like a rejection of women be able to do things. It's like, God damn it, Hollocks.
Yes,
God damn it, Hollocks.
I am a pain in the butt. But we start with a funny little scene where we see Morn sleeping on a table in the promenade. Odo wakes him up in a generally kind way. But then we get to the Ferengi and we see their game of Tongo. Tongo comes up frequently. There's no real explanation for the rules. it looks like it's
Yeah.
interesting because they use the same sort of like lazy Susan stuff they use for their like food and stuff. Like they, if you look at the Frankies have meals, they have like this giant like 3-layered lazy Susan sort of thing, and they spin it around when you
Yeah.
want to get what food you want. I'm like, okay, that's kind of neat. Tongo has like the same thing. It's like this big board, and the best guess to how it kind of works is you play cards. You put all your like latinum in this like the pot in the center. You spin
Yeah.
the wheel, and how the wheel spins because you place cards on this like table and the wheel spins the table. So I'm guessing like there's an element of you're basically constantly spinning cards in front of you, and maybe you want to like move cards around until you get like the proper cards you want. So you need to maybe like anticipate how you're going about this. But they do
Yeah.
explain that there's basically like 4 actions you can take, which is confront, evade, acquire, and retreat, which I tried to attribute what it is. Confront is probably some element of raise. That seems to how it's presented. Is like at one point a character raises and everyone just like folds their cards like, ah, fuck, she raised. She called us out on our bluff, right? Evade
Hmm.
doesn't make. I don't know what it is. Acquire is probably call. The way it's presented, it seems to be like a call. Like, okay, if everyone just wants to do the same thing, we're all just acquiring. Okay, that seems to be what it is. And then retreat is fold, right? So, it sounds like that
Hmm.
might be what the rules kind of are. But the whole point is you have all these Ferengi. They're going like really fast. They're doing all their stuff really quickly, and then suddenly they stop and they look at Jadzia's playing with them. Jadzia, I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah.
she's actually a pretty good character in this episode as well. I really do like what she does when she talks about the Ferengi, but she plays around along with these guys. And of course, this is when we introduce like some of the hypersexism. Jadzia apparently always wins when she plays them, right? And
Mhm.
some of the Ferengi, including Rom, are like, "How does this female keep beating us?" And then like
Mhm.
Jadzia points out that she mostly played when she was Curzondax, and they're like, "Ah, that makes sense. It's the male in her that's beating us." And she's like, "But I'm better at playing than him." And then she wins, and it's meant to be kind of funny. Um, I don't think this is the first time they've introduced the Ferengi sexism, but it's definitely a lot more on point, or not on point. It's a lot more at the forefront of the conversation. That being said, Quark is just like constantly coming on to Jedzia this episode, like constantly.
Mhm.
I want to see
You
let's
say.
what's
Coming,
some of
you
the
say.
dialogue that's happens. It's like, uh, oh yeah, she let's see, hold on. Yeah, Quark calls her prettier than most Ferengi females, and she comments as like, because they make a point that Rom's like, I want a proper Ferengi female, one who never wears clothes, never talks back, and never plays Tongo. So one thing we
Well,
learn is,
no, you have to get the emphasis right. Never wears clothes, never talks back, and never plays Tongo.
yeah, and
Just
that's
like
actually probably
God.
close to it because he's really just mad that he's losing. Um,
Yeah.
but we also learned that Ferengi women do not wear clothes, so they're not allowed to leave the home. Oh no, my phone just updated. I just got an email. I gotta silence my phone. But the I also believe that they're not allowed to leave the home planet of Ferenginar,
Yeah.
which that's very questionable when you have like these Ferengi men go out. But and this is something I find very interesting, right? Because uh, both we get the Nagus in this episode. Both Quark and the Nagus are sort of these archetypical Ferengi, right? Like they're kind of the most Ferengi we meet, more or less. Oh, hold on. I guess Pike just died. I wonder if he. Oh, he is back. I don't have to stall for time anymore as long as he can talk. Hello?
Sorry. Discord just threw a fit at me. Like, I had sound from everything else still, but Discord just like roboted out and then just cut all the sound. So yeah, just sorry about that. What was that about the Ferengi and
Oh, I was just
you
saying.
know?
You would agree that like the Nagus and Quark are like archetypical Ferengi, correct?
Yes,
Like
I
they're
would.
more or less like kind of meant to be the most Ferengi. Both of them have a thing for dominant women, but apparently they
Mhm.
both also believe that all Ferengi females need to be submissive. It's
Mhm.
interesting because every Ferengi that we see has like a thing for Jadzia or like another like dominant, powerful woman in the episode they're in, and I'm like, why is it that you like them so much when you're all adamant that like? Because here's the thing, Quark is like super adamant that like yeah, Ferengi woman
So
they're not allowed to work clothes, they have to stay home, and they can't earn profit. I'm like, but you like dominant women like Kira and Jadzia.
it's an exotic sort of thing. I'm like,
Well, I
so
just want to point out I don't think it's exotic because Quark lives on one of the most visited space stations in the galaxy. He knows Jadzia all the time. I don't think it's exotic for him. I mean, I guess like the personality is somewhat different, but my issue is like
so
so obviously like Quark's flirting is all friendly and stuff like that. I don't think he actually means a lot of it, but like hypothetically, like we know the two. Like here's the thing. Both women that Quark ends up actually having relationships with, they're phenomenal characters. We like both of them. One of them is in this episode. The other one is a Klingon. So
Mhm.
Quark is like a thing for like these powerful women who,
Don't
like,
forget the journalist. Don't
if
forget the
he
journalist later on from Cardassia.
sure yes
She's
that is
also
she's also there, but uh, all of these like women. And my thought is like, okay, if he actually married them, he would want them to be like a proper Ferengi bride, which is submissive.
mhm.
And I'm like, because he again
So
he says so much that episode, but he this episode, but yeah,
so, so it's not he doesn't want them to be his wife. He wants to have the fun, exciting moment, like passion of it. It's sort of like the so everyone get ready for a history fucking rant.
oh god,
My knowledge of colonial affairs comes out. So, Holix, did you know that a until uh, so basically, I'm going to take the example of colonial India, and the British experience there. A lot of the British officers and such who went there, working for the company, or like the few like actual proper British Army officers who went there, they pretty frequently had mistresses who were of whatever local population they were in. I won't say like local Indian women because the concept of Indian like you have many ethnicities and cultures with India, so it's better to be like, okay, you're in Gujarat, you have a mistress of the Gujarati people and cultural, but a lot of them had those mistresses and such, and people would write about them as like almost like a little bit of a status symbol. To I won't get deeper into it because then we're getting to a lot of stuff with race and such. But most of these officers, their ultimate goal was to go back and have the money to have a proper English, a proper British wife of the culture and caliber uh, you know, of Englishhood, of Britishhood, of just like, like it is a case of like these, like it is not that there is the role of the wife that Ferengi women play, and they want that. But they also want the role of the temptress, the seductive, exotic person who goes against the norm of Ferengi society to enjoy to basically like ooh is taboo, that sort of thing. Like that's sort of like what, like it's not that they want to marry Jadzia. They basically want sort of like both the just the in the moment thrill of being with Jadzia, but then to also say like, yeah, I got with a hot sexy trill lady. Like,
I mean, I get
yeah.
that. I guess I mean more in the sense, and I mean, yeah, your history lesson actually was relevant this time. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I guess like it's a little bit of an issue. We'll talk about it when we talk about this episode and who Quark kind of gets with here. But uh, yeah, I mean, like it's interesting, right? It's interesting that they have this like why when you could go like it's weird. I guess like because they're all very loyal to their empire. They're all like have those same beliefs, but it's I think it's a little bit interesting and weird how it plays out. But one of the things that happens in this scene as well is there's this other Ferengi who's like bugging Rom and wants like, hey, tell Quark about this idea I had. Rom tells him to walk away, like just drop it. It's not the time. They push. Pell pushes, and apparently it's a kind of what is the object like the thing? Oh, it's
It's
Gramillion
a
sand
bean.
peas. Yeah, it's a pea. Uh,
Oh, bean.
and like gives it to Rom, and Rom like eats it, and then immediately takes a drink. And Pell points out, yeah, the whole point of these is like the way they function. They make you instantly thirsty without you even realizing it. And as such,
Mm-hmm.
like Pell believes, hey, if you put these in your like if you you place your complimentary dishes of low carb beans with these things, you're going to sell so many drinks you're not going to be able to fill them up fast enough. And Cork is like, that's actually a really good idea. Like I want to know more about your idea. And this is
Mm-hmm.
where we get a rule of acquisition presented to us. We get the first one presented to us this episode is 59th rule of acquisition. Free advice is seldom cheap. Because at this point,
Yeah.
like, Cork is like, what do you want for this? And then, Pal points out again the 22nd rule of acquisition, which is a wise man can hear profit on the wind. Like, I know that you think this is a good idea. I I think like Pal's idea, right? Is like I want to give you this idea. You'll know I'll be valuable to you later, and you'll listen to my ideas going
Mm-hmm.
forward. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then we also learn there are 285 rules of acquisition plus the commentaries.
Yep.
So, uh, and actually, it's funny. While I was watching the scene, I was remembering House of Usher. Do you remember that one scene that we had a huge like argument about regarding how a guy was like treated because he presented his business idea and it was stolen from him?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
first off, everybody watch House
And
of
then the
Usher.
guy's like,
Really
yeah,
good,
and
but really House of Usher is really good. But there's this business scene where the character Roderick, I can't remember who he offers it to his boss. He basically like keeps trying to schedule a meeting with his boss, presents this amazing idea. The boss says, "Okay, I'll think about it. Like we'll work on it later." Then later learns that the boss went through with the idea without him, and he gets pissed and he like storms into the building like, "What the hell's going on?" And this guy basically said, "Look, you fucked up. You told me your plan, so I just took it. Like, why would you do that?
Mhm.
You big moron. Like, you had no leverage in that situation once you gave your idea up, and as such, you had no idea. You had the makings of an idea. I'm the one who actually made it work, and I thought it was a very interesting scene because, you know, you had the boss teaching Roderick an important lesson about business, saying like,
Mhm.
ultimately it is about, we get another rule of acquisition in this episode. We'll go over it when we get there, but it's like don't put friendship above profits. It's like when you have these people and you're trying to do business, you can't look at it as like, oh yeah, my buddy is totally gonna work for me and he's totally gonna bring me to the top with him if I give him all my good ideas. It's like, no, he's gonna take what he can. That's how business works. Like
Yeah.
a lot of times
So
friendships aren't gonna last that. And your issue is you can say that.
the way he so my issue was he then he basically treated it as a fucking power move to put Roderick in his place. Now, mind you, Roderick did come in disrespectful, but the way he went about it was basically saying, came off of, listen, I'm gonna give you the chance, and if you don't so he
I mean,
basically
like
expected
I think
Roderick to be faithful.
you hated him for that because like your point was like you just walk out of there and would never come back. Um,
So my issue is I have dealt with people like this where it's like so basically this guy is power tripping. That's how it comes off to me because instead of trying to mollify and seem reasonable of like explain it in a reasonable way of like listen, there's no contract here. This is like he instead goes for like right anger right back, right? And then he offers this out of like, listen, like if you do what he does is like, listen, you're gonna be loyal to me because I'm gonna give you the chance, and it's like, oh, like I'm just saying, like, no, you moron, you are going to get betrayed by Roderick at any point. Like me, I have made it like how like let me be honest with you. I don't ever want to be like super famous and such. It is very much just like I don't want to deal with the fucking hassle of it. And if I saw a boss act like this, and I saw it, and like it wasn't me. I was just watching it, and I was in that company. I'd be like, cool, I'm leaving because it's just like, yeah, it's going to be power gaming the whole way, and you should not like. If I get the sense of it's just going to be fucking power games, like it's
I
I have a
agree with
lot
you.
of issues with corporate shit and like this whole like jockeying for influence and such and expecting people to basically kiss your ass because it's like, oh, I'm gonna teach you a lesson and humiliate you for it, you're gonna thank me for it and be loyal. It's like, no, like either I'm going to like metaphorically slit your throat in business, or I'm just gonna leave you high and dry and like until you drive everyone else away. because they kind of catch on of like either what he's doing is just like being alone with him at all, and him being alone with everyone he does that to. It's just like, yeah, you are actively like setting up a time bomb for this company. I do not want to
So
be near this
I
time.
think I agree with you, and obviously, like I don't want to make any spoilers for House of Usher because I think anyone who's listening to this should watch that. It's much better than our podcast. But all I would say is like our disagreement on that scene was largely what I was arguing is that he was essentially trying to teach Roderick a hard lesson.
Hmm.
I think it was one of the situations where Roderick made a huge, huge mistake.
Oh, he did.
Right? He like that's one of those things, and like maybe it's me. I do believe there's some things in life you're not going to understand until you experience them. Like
Hmm.
you could know, oh yeah, like business is cutthroat, business, working in any sort of industry is difficult. It's like yeah, and like you'll understand that from like like a mental sort of situation. But when you're not until you're in it, until you like feel like the sting of being like screwed over, you're never really going to understand it. And
Hmm.
look, we can have a whole conversation about that too. But the whole point is,
Yeah.
I remember that scene when we were looking here because I was like, yeah, Pell really did give his like best idea to Quark, like, and I'm like, Quark could have just taken that and been like, yeah, screw you, punk, get out of here. But at the same time,
Hmm.
like, this was really more of an opportunity for Pell to essentially be like, hey, like, I give you this idea. Then I show you how talented of a businessman I am, citing the rules of acquisitions, sucking up to you, cites another rule of acquisition, the 33rd. It never hurts to suck up to the boss.
Hmm.
And also present the idea that I have a lot of good ideas coming forward in the future. You're going to want to keep me around. You're going to want to listen to my ideas, right? Because, like,
Hmm.
Pell was, like, apparently seemed to have to go through Rom to talk to Quark. He was like
Hmm.
he was trying to get to like Rom to hey bring up the idea, and Rom wouldn't do it until Quark basically intervened and asked himself. So I
Hmm.
think for Pell, it's like I'm giving you this idea essentially for free, and but I
Hmm.
have other ones in the works. Whereas like what we talked about in House of Usher was like, yeah, Roderick just was like, yeah, this is my golden goose idea. What do you think? It's like I think it is a golden goose idea. It's mine now. Like
Hmm.
that's one of those things where it's like Pell was actually very smart about this. And
Hmm.
there's other things that reminded me of House of Usher when watching this episode. We'll get there, but more or less,
Hmm.
the scene then follows with the Grand Nagus calling, uh, and
Hmm.
it's done in like a really funny way. He's just like, hold on, let's see if I can get it here. Uh,
Hmm.
how
Told
does
you I'd be back.
I told you I'd be back? And he's God. It's just who's the actress who plays the Grand Nagus again? It's not who I think it is, right?
No, it's not Armin, if that's what you're thinking. Grand Nagus Zek actor. Wallace Shawn. Wallace
Yes,
Shawn.
Wallace Shawn. Uh, which I think we brought up before. He has a latex allergy, which meant he was in a lot of pain wearing these masks. But yeah,
Hmm.
uh, so funny like how he presents himself, and he is coming back because he has a new business deal, and he wants Quark to be like his main negotiator for the Gamma Quadrant.
Hmm.
Obviously this is a great opportunity, and like he's over here, and there's a funny line here that I wrote down because uh, I think it says a lot about how Ferengi think about these things. He says, "That's right. I'm offering you the opportunity to make more profit than you've ever dreamed. All you have to do is earn it."
Hmm.
Do you see why I find that line kind of funny?
Uh, yeah.
Well, it's like how we you don't how we is like whenever you hear this like presented in like real life, right? You'll hear someone say, "Hey, you have an opportunity of a lifetime. It's yours for the taking." Right? Like the ideas we almost present those ideas as you're basically getting them for free, and
Hmm.
like earning it is the expectation, right? Like of course you're going to have to earn it. Why would I even need to say that? Right? But
Hmm.
when you get like a huge opportunity in front of you, it's almost like it's not you have no like the opportunity is being given to you, right? That's why we say it's like given. Earning an opportunity is almost antithetical, right? It's not an opportunity if you earn it necessarily, although you can work your way to specific opportunities. That's going away from the metaphor. What I just thought is I thought it was funny because it kind of presents how the Ferengi look at like work, as in like most because this explains. Remember how the Grand Nagus why he likes Quark, right? Is he said that Quark has the lobes to open up a bar at the mouth of a wormhole. And then they make a point. It's like, but the wormhole didn't exist when he opened the bar. It's like, no, but he knew. He had the instinct for it, right? In that sense, Zek like praised Quark for dumb luck. His good decision was based off luck. Whereas here, it's like, no, no, no. If you want all this profit, you're gonna have to earn it. It's like this is not an opportunity you can fall into, which I think that says a lot about how Ferengi think about like how they get profit. Is luck is almost like this thing that you have a set amount of depending on like I don't know some aspect of you, and like it's almost like a skill you use, right? If someone is successful in business for a Ferengi, it doesn't matter if it's by luck. They all look at it as you like that's your skill, right? You lucked into all these really dumb opportunities, but like that's on you. Like you have full right to claim those as like pride to be proud of those. Here it's like no, you're gonna have to work for this. That's just how I interpreted it. It's a little weird of an interpretation. But I thought it was funny because like it's like all of this opportunity is yours, or you have to earn it. It's like, oh well, I mean I figured I would. like I like it's kind of expected. Like, but the way it's presented to me, it sounded like that's because if you look at a lot of how the Ferengi talk about other stuff, and again, this would sort of fall into that satire of the Ferengi, right? Is the idea of like, oh, we're making fun of like capitalism because let's be fair, a lot of being successful in capitalism is about luck, right? That's just life in general. Being successful in life a lot of times comes down to luck, and that's not on you, right? It's like if you decide to play the lottery and you won, that's on you. If you put your money in the right stocks, that's on you. So a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, I just happen to know the right guy to get me a great job. That's not like a lot of times life is about luck. The Ferengi seem to look at that luck though as some sort of like divine right, as in like you being successful is because that luck was owed to you by the lobes you have, the instinct you have, right? Bullshit like that. But let's see. Then we get a nice scene with Zek talking to Cisco. I think this is Cisco's only appearance in the episode. But he's basically saying like
I think so.
Kira and Cisco want him to like he wants to like Zek wants to hold a like huge meeting here for all these people who want to get opportunities, from the Gamma Quadrant to work with the Ferengi. And Kira and Cisco are kind of sitting here like, I don't know if we should trust you on this. Kira basically says like, let's see here. She basically implies that the Ferengi reputation. No, she says outright the Ferengi's reputation speaks for itself. And Zek is like a reputation of honesty, decency, and reliability. You always know what to expect when working with a Ferengi. And she's like, which is why, if you're smart, you don't do business with Ferengi. Just a lot of top tier racism from Kira right here. Not gonna lie. Admittedly, though, Cisco does actually shut her up for this. He says, like, I think you've made your point, Major. Like, let's stop it with the racism here. This is the leader of an empire we're talking to. And he basically makes a point that like, oh yeah, you're very like misguided and misinformed on our people. And Kira's like, yeah, no, I know how this always works out. If we find out you're cheating the Dosai and ruining the reputation of the Alpha Quadrant in the Gamma Quadrant, you're never going to set foot on the station again. And Zek, of course, responds with, "Did anyone ever tell you your eyes shine with the brilliance of Kiberian diamonds?" Immediately starts hitting on her. And then he asks her, and this is actually a really interesting scene. He's like, so tell me, Major, could Bajor use 50,000 kilos of benzene nitrate? And she's like stunned for a moment. She's like, yeah, that much could fertilize the entire northern peninsula. And he's like, well, I've recently come into possession of 50,000 kilos of benzene nitrate. And to show you how much your cooperation means to me, I'll let you have the entire shipment. Kira's like stunned. She's like, oh my God, I need this for my people. And now she realizes she might actually have to work with Zek. He promises he'll do the business well. And Cisco basically like leans into it. It's like, all right, you can have your meeting with the Dosai here. And he says, all right, now for the deal, I'll give you a 25% off the usual price of the fertilizer. And they're like, wait, I thought you were saying it's a gift. He's like, a gift? No, but you know what? I'll let you have it at cost. He's like, then Cisco comes in. It's like, I have a better idea. why not consider the nitrate a gift to the people of Bajor? And Zek's like, a gift? What? And Cisco's like, look, if you want to conduct business on here, I would suggest giving this gift to the Bajoran people. So this sounds like bribery with extra steps. I'm sure it's going to be written off as a, oh yeah, this is a tribute so we can use your station as a business deal. Totally not like a bribe. But
Yeah, it's. I mean,
yeah.
it was already a bit of a bribe. It was just one that Zek was trying to like get more advantage from by making them also pay to receive the bribe. But it's like this sort of thing always comes up of like, what is a goodwill mission that brings gifts, if not a goodwill mission with bribes? If that makes
Well, yeah,
sense,
and
like.
I think it could also just be more in the sense of like, I don't want to do this because like I think you could interpret it not as a bribe because this is essentially one empire paying money like to use and interact with another like faction's assets and resources, right? It's like, hey, the Bajoran people, we're going to want to do a lot of business through the wormhole, which is in Bajoran space. They're the ones getting the nitrate, right? It's in Bajoran space, so we're going to be coming and going all the time. We want to have business on your station. It's like it's not really a bribe so much as it is actually kind of just payment. The way it kind of came about is a bribe because generally the Bajoran people are more than happy, it seems, to let people come and go to the wormhole. But it's one of those things where you could look at this as like, essentially you're paying for the continued use, right? Oh yeah, you're free to use it, but just so you never revoke our usage, we want to give you this nice gift of goodwill. It's kind of a bribe, it's kind of payment, it's kind of something that like the Bajoran people really need, so maybe they're just gonna like put it over. But Zek does compliment Cisco in his negotiations. He's like, your skills aren't bad for a human.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course like he makes like bedroom eyes at Kira again and then walks out.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I also want to point out there's a lot of scenes they really like amp up Zek's grossness. There's like a scene that opens up with him getting his ear hair combed.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's actually no, it's the exact next scene where his ear hair is getting combed and Quark is massaging his feet. This is something I don't like too much about Quark sometimes. They really do sort of present him as like this lapdog, kind of a bitch. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
I mean, you gotta kiss ass to the Negas, man. That's always been the case.
I
Like
know, but
he's getting this.
there's other characters that seem to not go out of their way to do it. We'll talk more about that, but like Quark is a little bit like almost depowered this episode in terms of like his ability to, because I'm not gonna lie, this almost seems like something that what he would do is he would, the Grand Nagus needs his feet massaged. I'm gonna sit in this chair and I'm gonna tell Rom to massage the Grand Nagus' feet while I talk to the Nagus. That sounds more like something Quark would do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't know the situation. We just you come into the scene, he's already doing that. But it turns out like Zek wants to like get a bunch of tula berries, which is some sort of weird fruit that's used to make wine, and he wants to basically like have the first major venture from the Ferengi Empire in the Gamma Quadrant be a wine like monopoly. But let's see. Trying to think of like what happens next because like they're really just talking about this business, and Quark's a little confused. He doesn't really understand why the tula berries like are going to be used. And even when he explains it to Rom's also just kind of like confused, like, I don't really get what this is about. And Quark is like, well, that's because you're not as wise as the Nagus. And like even
The
Quark is kind
Negas
of like, yeah,
knows.
I don't know what we're doing. But then Pell comes in, and Pell makes a comment, the bigger the smile, the sharper the knife, which is rule 48 of the rules of acquisitions.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly Quark is like interested. He's like, "What are you talking about?" And Pell makes a point. It's like, "Do you ever think about why the Nagus is putting you in charge?" And like Pell theorizes, "Yeah, the Nagus will get all the credit if this is successful, but if this fails, you get all the blame."
You're the
Uh,
fall guy.
and really, Pell is just kind of so. Here's the two things. One, the first reading of this is Pell is basically like using this to get an in with Quark. Right? He's like, look, I've offered all this good advice. Now I'm going to make you think that you need my advice because you're in danger. At which point, Quark is like, all right, you're my assistant. And I'll give you 20% of all my profits. And, Pell takes the deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Quark offers, I think, like originally, like no, I think Pell demands like 25. He says 15. Pell goes to 20, and then they settle that on the deal, right?
Hmm.
And like, but the second reading, and we learned that the second reading is probably the more accurate one later. Pell is legitimately looking out for Quark right here. Pell is like, look, you actually might be in danger if you fuck this up. So you need to make sure you don't fuck this up.
Yeah.
But yeah, now Pell and Quark are partners, and I'm not gonna lie, the dynamic between Quark and Pell is actually pretty good. I really do like it throughout this episode. And then Pell goes back to his room, and then shocker, he grabs a special tool and cuts off his ears to show that he has the weak lobes of a female. He is a woman. Pell's a woman.
You had to emphasize that, huh? You
Well,
really had to
I was
emphasize that.
look. I in this episode we get the greatest line in all of Star Trek, but we have to preface people with it.
Male known as pale is actually the female known as pale. Uh huh.
Yes,
Gotcha.
yes, but it's funny though because like it's like such a comedic thing that we've seen before, where it's just like when, when Pell takes off the ears, it's like, ah, yes, I have these slightly smaller ears underneath it. Uh, it's like, oh my god.
Yeah.
So Ferengi women look 1 to 1 like Ferengi men, except smaller ears and they have boobs. That's the only difference.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but then we get to like them. We get to Quark, Cisco, the Nagus, and Kira, as well as Zach's assistant, Inglato, I believe is his name.
Hmm.
No, that's one of the aliens, I believe. Yeah, so they're all waiting at the airlock, and apparently the Nagus keeps feeling up Kira's ass, which is funny because she threatens him. It's like, the 50,000 kilos of benzene, she'll shove him right up here, and then she gets cut off. And then the weird looking aliens come in and they throw like one of their guards like through the airlock.
Hmm.
Uh, these aliens look really fucking silly. This is like very like lame in terms of aliens. It's face paint. And what was it
Hmm.
that you said they were disappointed in when they made these aliens?
Disappointed. No. Oh, so basically these characters are going to get very directed to be very comical throughout the episode, and then they were like, "Oh, this is the wrong choice." Of course, the same director who said that also was like, "No, this episode needed to be comical to some degree." And it's like, which is it?
I mean,
Which
it kind of.
fucking is
I
it?
mean,
Are you?
let's be. Well, here's the thing. Like, I kind of agree. These like this alien's like a weird one note. They're like weirdly hyper aggressive. But you made a point that they were almost like characterized like all meathead football players.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like
Though the paint
if you
itself.
hold on, if you look at the picture of
Fun
them, they have
fact,
like weird
everyone.
hats that look like something almost like a rugby hat or something
Old,
like that. But
like an old style football helmet. You remember
yeah,
what we used to wear, the little
yeah,
leather caps? Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, but uh, yeah. Actually, everyone, be aware. Another detail I learned. Apparently, they base the face paints on what the native populations would wear in like Borneo and such. Which I just realized you all don't know where Borneo is. You know what? I'm not going to explain where it is. Get a map.
Can you explain it to
Get
me?
an atlas. I'll explain it afterwards,
Okay.
after the episode.
Well,
Hmm.
all right then. But yeah, so these aliens are super hyper aggressive. I say aliens with like almost quotation marks because again, they are just like people with face paint. There's really not a lot of effort put into like making
Whoa,
these.
whoa, 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 whoa. How dare you be anti-Trill? How dare you?
That's true. That's true. Well, okay,
How
so
dare
the excuse you can almost make with like
Andorians?
uh
Wait, don't they
no,
have
yeah,
the ears?
yeah, no, Andorians are also like blue, like full body like blue. Like these things, they don't even have like paint on their neck. Like
Wait,
they it's like their face is painted red, like red white with like blue dots in different patterns. I guess that's supposed to be their skin. I don't know if it's face paint like in universe, but
I
then
love
like
how the racism of the future has evolved beyond, oh, you're not a part of the in group of like humanity and such. It has now evolved to, you're not alien enough to actually qualify as alien. I'm sorry. That's what it is now.
there's probably a lot of aliens in. I was gonna make the joke. There's a lot of aliens that'll look at us and they'll be like, "Yeah, you're not really like you're kind of too Vulcan. Like, you're not really a sufficiently alien. You're too Vulcanish. It's like you're just like Vulcans with like rounded off ears. It's so weird. It's like, geez, thanks guys. Like,
Thanks, guys.
and we look at them and think
Thanks.
the same thing. It's like, yeah, you're just humans with pointed ears and also like nerds. Um,
Nerd.
but yeah, so these guys are like hyper aggressive, and there's like a negotiation where Quark and Pell are negotiating with these people, and like Quark is like, yeah, we want like 10,000 barrels of this, and like we'll give you 5,000. And then, like they like shove the table and they like smash the table. At one point, they like smash the little like reader that Quark is using to like have the deal signed. The thing I don't like about this is like Quark is very like passive and sniveling in this scene. Like these guys are threatening him, which I guess is in character, but Pell is like 100%. It's like, if you don't make the deal, you don't deal with the Ferengi, or Quark represents the Nagus. You better respect him. Like, so it's a little weird that like Pell is so competent here. Like,
Hmm.
I'm fine with Pell being competent. I just feel that Quark is like rendered less competent to make Pell seem more competent. But I think the episode would
Hmm.
work better if it showed them as a good team, right? Because how it ends up
Hmm.
at the end of the episode is they're supposed to have made a good team, but so many of these like scenes show Quark is basically like the Rom of the two of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just feel like I think it would have worked a lot better if maybe you had some sort of scene where maybe Quark was like scared. The pressure of the deal is getting to him. Pell ends up like stepping in, and then once like Quark gets his feet back underneath him, he's actually really good at negotiating. They don't really show that,
Hmm.
so it's a little bit like I wish they had showed a little bit more of like the Shark Tank sort of Quark, whereas Pell is just like on the game the whole time. Like Pell actually makes a lot of really good discussions and decisions like in this that I'm like, oh yeah, like that is actually like a really like good idea, Pell, or that's really good insight. Like it's very
So
logical and clever how Pell thinks, and it's like
I
that's
I
fine, but I feel Quark
I
should be as well.
so I know you meant like the actual show Shark Tank, but I have kind of like Shark Tank is never on my mind anymore. What instead my mind thought you thought what I thought you meant was fish tank, and I was like sitting here for a second like, what do you mean the fish? What do you mean fish tank? Quark, that would be awful. He's never like that.
Okay, so
Sorry.
first off, I was more meaning like the because like the sort of Shark Tank. I did say Shark Tank. I wanted to say I was originally just gonna say Shark, but that wouldn't have made a lot of sense just out of context. So I said Shark Tank. Like it's like the whole like the business shark, right? And that's why Shark Tank is called Shark Tank, right? It's a bunch of business sharks. But when I was thinking that, I'm like, oh, if I don't say Shark Tank, I'm just gonna say Quark needs to be more like a shark. That wouldn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So Pell is like, again, I'm not a big fan of the fact that Quark feels a little depowered in this episode. Uh,
Yeah.
it feels like it's like we kind of get it later, but we get a small scene. Well, I mean, we'll just cut to this one scene because it's not a big deal. The Nagus is trying to seduce Kira, gives her like a little necklace, and then Kira and Dax have like a conversation about like the Ferengi people.
Mm-hmm.
And Kira's basically like, I'll kind of read it out because I think it's fairly nuanced and interesting to talk about. So Kira asks him, like, I don't understand your attitude about the Ferengi. And Dax says, that's because you don't socialize with them the way I do. Looking back over 7 lifetimes, I can't think of a single race I've enjoyed more. And Kira's like, did anyone ever tell you have very strange tastes? And Dax says, I admit they place too much emphasis on profit and their behavior towards women is somewhat primitive. And Kira's like, they're greedy, misogynistic, untrustworthy little trolls, and I wouldn't turn my back on them for a second. Dax then says, neither would I, but once you accept that, you'll find they can be a lot of fun. Now, I was thinking of this before when they had the conversation between like Kira and Nagus, or the Nagus and Cisco.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you could like, you see this a lot in Star Trek. There are some species that will just like, they're so, uh, they're so like stubborn about like certain things that they're inflexible, right? You could look at maybe the Vulcans. Oh yeah, they're always hyperlogical. They're never emotional or anything like that. In fact, there was an episode of Lower Decks where they followed like a like minorly emotional Vulcan, which meant that
Why?
they showed what's like a lesser form of like not like lesser anger. They showed like dissatisfaction in like a result, and all the other Vulcans are like, "You're being overly emotional. Please calm down." Like it's such a minor thing, but that's like the joke, right? That's the joke in Lower Decks is that this Vulcan is so like compared to other Vulcans, she's hyper emotional, but compared to like humans, she has no emotions, right? That's the joke. But
Hmm.
the point is, there's a lot of aliens in Star Trek that are like all very like, oh, they are this one way, and they're never going to compromise on that specific value, belief, or trait. The idea of I think you could
Hmm.
talk about with Ferengi being such an interesting species in the setting is technically you are always going to be able to make a deal with a Ferengi. It might not always be a
Hmm.
good deal, but you're always going to be able to make a deal. And I wish that was something they maybe explored more if they didn't try and like, characterize a lot of times the Ferengi as like, mostly negative traits, right? I wish they kind of gave these Ferengis a little bit more of like, yeah, when in doubt, you're always going to be able to make a deal with a Ferengi, right? Like you might try and make it like you might try and like do a trade deal with an Andorian, but they might be like, yeah, we don't really agree with like your policies and who you are as people, so we're not going to trade with you. Meanwhile, the Ferengi are like, dude, we don't give a shit as long as you have Latinum, right? I mean,
Hmm.
like you can actually make that as like a comparison because the Federation has pretty strict rules for when you're allowed to join. I think there's an episode in TNG where they were evaluating if a planet was ready to join the Federation, and the planet basically was the one faction on the planet was trying to hide the fact that a major faction they were at war with, because that is a disqualification for Federation like membership. Is that
Hmm.
if your planet's not unified, basically. And
Hmm.
I can imagine a situation where maybe like a non-unified planet is trying to make like a trade deal with the Federation, but the Federation won't deal with them because it's like, yeah, we don't really support your policies. We don't want to work with you. Ultimately, like, if you're a part of the Federation, we would work with you, but you're not part of the Federation, so we're not working with you, and that's just our policy. It's like, okay, I see what you're saying. Meanwhile, the Ferengi come in and they're like, hey, you got money? Cool. We will do whatever you want. Like, that's just one of those things where I think you can almost put that as like a point of pride in their belt, where it's like the Ferengi are flexible. You might criticize the fact that they're hyper capitalism, but at the end of the day, if you need them to do stuff, you can always pay them to do
They'll
stuff.
do it. Yeah. Yeah. I
There's
mean,
no
there's certain
there's
things.
there's no honor among it, but at the same time, it's like if you need it, you need it.
Yeah. Yep. Ferengi.
But and that's kind of like what
Ferenginar.
Dax is saying is like she sort of like views the Ferengis like, look, once you know how to deal with them, they're easy to deal with. The problem is most people don't find how to deal with them very distasteful, which is like, yeah, I get it. Like, they are hyper sexist, they are hyper misogynistic, they are like little like greedy backstabbers. But at the end of the day, it's like, no, if you know how to deal with them, they're like very reliable. That's what Zek was saying before, right? Is like, you always know what you get when you're dealing with a Ferengi. And sometimes it's just not very good.
Yep.
Uh, and let's see. We get to another game of Tongo where there's a brief fight between Zek and Jadzia because Zek wants to cheat at the game and everyone wants to let him, but Jadzia's not letting him. Uh,
Hmm.
and then Zek changes the deal that he wants Quark to negotiate. He wants now 100,000 like barrels of the wine. And Quark is like having a panic attack. He's like, "Oh shit, I can't fucking do this. Like this is impossible. They wouldn't even sell us 10,000." He walks
Hmm.
away, and Zek. Let's see. Um, I'm trying to see because there's a nice line. Um, hold on. Oh yeah. Uh, Zek basically wants to like start talking with like Pell, and like because Quark walks away, and Zek kind of like looks at Pell, is like, all right, maybe I can work with you and deal with you, and Pell just kind of like politely says, yeah, I'm gonna sit down on this round, and walks away, and Zek says like such loyalty must be expensive. Because it's like very
Mm,
clear that Pell's walking away because she's loyal to Quark. And Dax points out, it's like you can't buy that kind of loyalty. And we get it in a few, I think, next scene. But Pell is in love with Quark. She
yeah.
loves him, and she wants what's best for him, and it's very kind of sweet. Um, she is insanely insightful when it comes to business. She's very helpful, but at the end of the day, she just kind of wants to basically like support her man, and that's it. And he's not even her man yet. So I'm like,
Yeah.
what a nice person. Like,
Yeah.
she's just such a good person, and like she basically like goes up to him is like Pell goes back up to Quark, uh, and I'm trying to see like what she's saying like he's panicking, he's never going to be able to do the job, and she's like, you'll be able to get it because you're a great negotiator and I'm going to be there to help you. The whole time he's like, wait, why are you going to help me? And she's like, for 20% of the profits, of course. And Quark is like, oh, of course. uh,
Of
and
course.
then
It's.
in the next scene, this is one we get where Jedzia sort of corners Pell and talks to her, and this is a scene that you brought up. It's an interesting sort of insight. uh,
Mhm.
Dax basically like talks into the fact that like she kind of loves Quark in her own little way, like, oh yeah, as a friend, right? But she's basically talking about
Mhm.
like, yeah, Quark, he's actually like, not a bad guy when you really get to know him. At one point, he recreated my childhood bedroom from a brief description I made and showed it to me as like a gift. Then he tried to kiss me, but before that, it was still very sweet. And she's like, yeah, I really do kind of like love him as like, he's a weird guy, but he's a good friend. And then Pel's like, yeah, so do I. And then Dax is like, you really do, don't you? And this is where I was like, yeah, I
Mhm.
like Dax here. She walks Pel into the conversation of like, yeah, you love him, right? Like, it's well written
Yep.
dialogue, and I think Dax pulls it off well. Uh, and Dax is like, look, like, hold on, let's see here. Dax is basically saying like, you know, uh, I see that you love Quark. It's like, oh, does he not know? And then Pel's like, he doesn't even know I'm a female. And Dax is like, you're a woman? Like, holy shit. So Dax was just
Mm.
perfectly like you brought it up in the whole thing where it was partially showing like how the future of humans and the Federation sort of view same sex relationships, which is Dax didn't even consider like, oh, like of course this is a woman. She's like, no, like this, Pel's gay for Quark. And that's all she thought.
Yeah.
And it's like once she realizes, oh no, it's not gay. You're actually a woman, and you just love him. You're just in love with him, but you're a woman. Not okay. Holy shit, I didn't know that. She's more surprised by the fact that Pell is a woman
Yeah.
than the idea that Pell's in love with Quark, which is just funny.
Yeah. I
Let's
mean, I,
see,
I mean,
and of course,
don't we all love Quark? Don't we all love Quark? Come
like
on.
I said, Quark is a very interesting and lovable character, and I want to talk so much more about him. But Pell makes a point that like, yeah, Ferengi female are not allowed to leave their planet, and I'm basically violating the law. I made these synthetic ears, and I decided to wear clothes. And Dax like, you wanted more, and she's like, but why? Why? And Pell's like, what other reason? To acquire profit. And it's like, oh yeah, she's not that different from the male Ferengi. She wants money.
Yeah.
Which is that's funny,
Yeah.
but she's also in love with Quark, right? Like originally she came here just to make money, but she ended up falling in love. She never expected that. So
Mhm. Mhm.
it's a nice little detail. I think it's a nice detail to kind of show like, yeah, it's a female, but like you're trying to show, it's the same story you see in a lot of things. How do you sort of like fight sexism? You sort of show men and women are fundamentally the same when you get down to certain traits and aspects, right? There's certain things that are just universal to all humans and, don't belong to just men or women, right? Except, when you have to do that with Ferengi, it's like, okay, what's the universal trait they all share regardless of sex? It's like, well, they want money. That's it.
Money. We
Yep.
we want that money.
I want that
Money,
profit. Why
money,
would you risk your
money.
life? Because I can get a lot of money from it. Like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about? It's like, so, then Quark comes in and they're ready for their deal, and then we cut to Zek again trying to hit on Kira, slaps her ass again when she like turns him down, and then Quark and Pell come in. They're like, yeah, we fucked up the deal. They left.
Yeah.
Uh, and Zek is basically saying like, "This is a catastrophe. It could be a catastrophe. This is your big chance, Quark, and you blew it. You may have seriously harmed the future Ferengi opportunities in the Gamma Quadrant." And then Pell steps in and says, "Hold on a minute. We're gonna get you those Tula berries, and you're gonna give us your ship, and we're gonna go to the Gamma Quadrant and do it, right, Quark?" He's like, "We are. Yes, yes, we are." And then Zek is like, "All right, I guess if you can, I guess I'll give you my ship and you can go. But let's see, either you get the Dosi to sign the contract, or you'll be tending that worthless bar for the rest of your life, Quark." And it's interesting because Pell is like the underling to Quark here, right? Zek doesn't even really address Pell for a lot of these things. It's all about Quark, so it's
Mhm.
like very hierarchical and business like oriented in the sense of like, yeah, Quark, you're responsible for your underling. I don't need to tell your underling what to do. I need to tell you what to do, and you'll tell the underling what to do. But
Yeah.
uh, again, there's another part of the like. This is another one of those scenes where I'm kind of like, yeah, Pell has a really good idea, right? Like, okay, we fucked up the deal here, but there's still an opportunity for us to succeed, right? And she comes up
Mhm.
with it, and I'm like, it's just another situation where Quark feels depowered. I'm okay with Pell coming up with all these ideas, right? My issue is like, I feel Quark should also be coming up with some of these ideas too. Like,
Mhm.
it's again, it feels he's a little depowered for this episode. Uh, it makes the point, I think, because I think the reason they depowered Quark, right, is they're showing how loyal Pell is to Quark, right? If Pell's coming up with all the good ideas, but she's still involving Quark, it's because she loves him, right?
Mhm.
She could at like any point undermine him and like swoop in and take the deal herself, but she doesn't.
Mhm.
She's always trying to support Quark, no matter how far he falls. Uh, she legitimately loves him. So it's like it makes her seem like a really good person, but I do feel it just undermines Quark a little bit, which is, when you have this character for one episode, unfortunately, and no other episode, it's like, okay, I guess you got to spend
Yeah.
all your time building them up. But I just feel you could have done it with. Again, I would have preferred seeing them function a lot more like partners, in the sense of like,
Mhm.
if Quark fails, Pell steps in. If Pell fails, Quark steps in, and they work together. I think that would endear me to them together more. But it's not that big a deal. It's not too world breaking. Uh, on their way to the Dosi planet, Pell brings up the fact that she believes the Nagus isn't actually interested in the 100,000 vats of the Tula berries. Uh, she believes she's like, Quark then suggests, like, oh, do you think he's purposely trying to sabotage the negotiation? Uh, and she's like, I don't know. Why would he do that? And he's like, I don't know. He has some sort of, he wants something of the situation, but they don't know what it is. And let's
Mhm.
see. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, so they're basically trying to figure out what the information, like, uh Zek wants is, but they still have to make this deal. So they're like, look, uh we have to succeed, and we'll do it together. And Quark is like, as long as I got you as my partner, we got this. And then Pell is like, oh,
Yeah.
there's something I got to tell you, Quark. And Quark's like, yeah, I already know. And she's like, you do? And of course, she's like, I'm a woman. And he's like, it's no secret, but unfortunately, you agreed to a 20% cut of the profits, and I'm not renegotiating. 21st rule of negotiation of rules of acquisition: never place friendship above profits. You know this. Like, and she's just like, her head just drops, and she like goes to the back of the ship. She's like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. That's clearly what I was going to ask. Nothing else. Because at this point,
Yeah.
Pell is just thirsty for Quark.
I mean, aren't we all?
I mean, I don't know, man. Those lobes.
Those lobes, though, like, damn,
All
damn,
right, and
the
then we get
lobes
another
of
scene that's
it.
a little weird. It's kind of funny, and there's some aspects of it that are in character, but it's weird. So Odo shows up, sort of commenting to Rom, because Rom seems like Rom is having a tough time tending to the bar, and Odo's like, "Oh, you feeling overwhelmed?" He then Odo asks, like, "When is Quark due back?" And Rom's like, "How should I know? He never tells me anything anymore. It's Pell, that flabby-eared interloper. He's stealing my brother's affections." And Odo's like, "Yeah, you're better off." And Rom was like, "But he's my brother. Would you let someone steal your brother?" And Odo's like, "I don't have a brother. Not that I know of, anyway." And then he sort of like looks fondly in the distance. And Rom asks, "But if you did?" And Odo's like, "Well, I suppose if I did have a brother, even one as worthless as Quark, I wouldn't let anything come between us." And he says this with, like, full
Yeah,
seriousness. And
yeah,
then
and
he looks almost
those words of the future.
he looks it's interesting. He looks almost shocked that he has like such a like if he looks shocked that in his imagination of him having a brother, he felt so strongly about protecting him.
Hmm.
And first off, this scene itself feels a little out of character. It feels kind of forced to get the next scene going.
Hmm.
But I thought there was two things that I thought of when happening here. One, I feel like Odo's a little bit thrown off that Quark's not here. Like, he has all this energy and nowhere to direct it.
Yeah.
He's like, ah, man, like, I know there's crime going on somewhere. I have a feeling there's crime, but usually I just look at Quark and he's the reason for it. But he's not here. My crime sense is
I
going
can't.
off, but I can't
I
racially profile
can't.
the Ferengi.
Yeah, I can't profile. What am I supposed to do here?
My job?
Oh my.
But the
No,
alternative,
that.
the alternative is like, when he thinks of another member of his species as a familial connection, he has an intense
Yep.
desire to protect them, which, yeah, that comes up later.
Yeah, that comes up later.
That seems like something that's almost like hard wired into species like Odos, because we see that a little bit later. But
Yeah.
anyway, once Odo says, like, I would do anything to make sure they don't come between us, that inspires Rom to break into Pell's quarters, and he finds the synthetic lobes, and he realizes that Pell is not a male, she's a female.
Oh god.
And then we get this weird scene. It's interesting. So they're at the Dosi meeting place, uh, and it's kind of interesting because, like, all these people are like hyper aggressive, but they're like negotiating business. So it's kind of interesting.
Mhm.
I guess I would like to see maybe a little bit more of the species in the sense of, like, maybe they're all hyper aggressive, but they still have these interesting, like, more high minded functions. They're not just like brutes, right? It's like if a nation was run by barbarians, there would still need to be the politicians in charge of all those barbarians, and those politicians would be like barbarians themselves. Uh, and it would be like, it's like, it's like a
Think we Brooke think
Gro-
trade need to go up. Mm.
No,
Mm,
Grognak does not believe taxation will improve the economy. Grog thinks we need to lower the taxes. It's like, but that's what it kind of comes across as. They're like, you see these people walking by and they're like, I control the interests, so I want to supervise all operations. That's ridiculous. Then I will find another partner, and they're like shoving each other when they're doing this.
mhm.
So this is like the only time we get like a scene where I feel Quark is a little bit closer to character, but it feels very kind of lackluster. Uh, Quark's like kind of drinking a little bit. He sees the person he needs to make a deal with, and he's like, "All right, this is like this is the place where opportunities are made, so I'm going to go do what I need to do." He gives his drink to Pell, goes up to the dude, taps him like hard on the shoulder, and says like, I'm here to talk to you about this deal. I'm not leaving until I get your thumb scan on this lucrative contract. And the guy's like, "Yeah, you had your chance. Go away." Turns around. Quark slaps his shoulder again. It's like, "I'm not leaving until we're done." And he's like, "It's like you are starting to annoy me," and like shoves him. And then Quark is like, "I know what to do." Then he grabs the big like wine barrel and like throws it
Mhm.
as like this show of like aggression. Uh, let's see.
Mhm.
Let's see. And then he just makes it like a sarcastic sorry, like that one scene in like yeah, you know what I'm talking about from South Park. Like the
Yeah.
AT&T things, like, "Oh, sorry, we
BP.
wrote." Oh, it was BP. "We spilled all
We're
that oil.
sorry.
We're sorry." That's
Yeah,
almost how he says it.
release Cthulhu. No. Eventually, it gets to the. If you've seen the whole thing, eventually they do another drill, and it releases Cthulhu, and it's just like, "We're sorry, we did that." And it's like, "Oh my god, BP."
Yeah, but it's like it feels really weird because then like the Dosi is like, I should have killed you back at the station, and Quark's like, "But you didn't, because deep down you recognize a good opportunity when you see one. Just your thumbprint is like right here. It's like, all right, you can have the 10,000 vats." And Quark's like 100,000. He's like, "Oh my god, I told you that was impossible." And like Quark's like, "I'm not leaving until we get it." And he's like, "Then you're gonna stay." So they, Quark and Pell like stay the night. Uh, I guess I didn't like this a lot because like I agree. One thing that would like help in the situation is like, okay, you need to show an act of aggression that you're serious about this, right? Some element
Mhm.
of like, at first I thought he was gonna like, because the Dosi he's talking to is like standing next to a ledge. I'm like, dude, if you just like shoved him over the ledge and he fell into like the wine, and then you stood over him and said like, "I'm not leaving until we have a deal," he might respect that. But the way it kind of comes across, like he just like drops the barrel, and like everyone in the room like looks at him, and he's like, "Sorry," and then he goes back to doing the deal, and I'm like, I get what you were trying to do. It just didn't really like translate, I think, super well to the screen.
Yeah.
It's like, and again, this is meant to be like Quark finally makes a good foothold into the deal, and this was a good move by him. Like Pell later is complimenting him on this, and I'm sitting there thinking like, Pell, you were doing so much. Again, it's just more should have been done with Quark. I'm gonna kind of leave it at that because I'm a broken record at this point.
Y-
But then, since they're staying on the planet the night, like Quark and Pell get a room, and like Quark wants to remain close, so he doesn't want to go back to the ship, and he wants Pell to stay here too. Uh, and Pell's like super uncomfortable, like, no, we can't sleep in the same bed. We can't do that at all. And I'm not sure if like Pell's just uncomfortable, like being in the same room as a male that she's in love with, right? Or if she's worried her ears will fall off in the middle of the night or something like that.
Mhm.
But
Both.
she's basically like trying to stop, like put off going to sleep. She's like, "Oh, let's have a toast," and he's like, "To what?" It's like, "To profit, of course." And she keeps trying to like stall him from going to sleep, offering him wine. And then like she's praising him for what he did, knocking the barrel over, and the deals he's made. And then she's like talking about how great he is, and he's like, "Yeah, you're pretty good too. Like you know all your rules. You're really smart. You're really helpful. You're very loyal." And then Pell is like, "And you have such a nice smile." And he's like, "I do." And then
I know.
Pell kisses him.
I know.
And then like he falls, and then Quark like Pell like falls on top of him, and they're on the bed, and then suddenly one of the Dosi comes in. Uh, it's so awkward, and Quark is sitting here like, I have no idea what to do. I am not into this. I don't like people with large lobes. I'm not into large lobes. Like, and the Dosi's like, "Oh, am I interrupting?" And Quark's like, "No, you're definitely not." And Pell just kind of seems like a little sad, like she's been rejected, which is, it is sad, right?
Mhm.
She loves him, and she tried to express her love, and it kind of backfired because she got ahead of herself. Uh, And then this is where Zyri explains the situation because she says, let's see where she. I want to see
Hmm.
how she says this. Uh, Look, he can't get you all those vats because there aren't 100,000 vats of Tuliberry wine on the planet. But I can get you in touch with the people who can get you that. And Quark's like, okay. So, like, what do we need to do? He's like, okay, so you make a deal with me, and I'll get you that information. And then you could take that information and make your deal. Uh, and she tells him, you need to find the Karama. And he's like, oh, who are the Karama? And she's like, it's an important power within the Dominion. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the first name drop of the Dominion in a random Ferengi episode in a small deal that like Quark's trying to make. Um, you were mentioning before about like what the goal of like introducing the Dominion here was, and it was about like creating a unified identity for the Gamma Quadrant.
Yeah, to like beyond just like, hey, we stopped at this one planet and we dealt because we've had remember the episode where Odo had to take the criminal back and literally we didn't even see that planet and such.
Yeah.
And we yeah, and it's like, yeah, this is actually the first time where it's like, okay, we're now seeding things that will come up properly. Like
Yeah, well,
fully like
it's also like I think it's impressive that because like I don't know if they knew from what their like words were what they would turn the Dominion into.
they didn't.
Uh,
It was just a
uh
name at this point.
Yeah, but at the same time, the Dominion becomes one of the most influential entities. I mean, the Dominion War is the most defining element and defining moment in all of Star Trek, in my opinion. And
Hmm.
it's one of those things that, like, introducing it here makes a lot of sense because it seems innocuous, but you're also not supposed to think of it too much until it becomes a little bit more relevant, right? Like the idea of here's
Hmm.
this entity that they're just in control of the Gamma Quadrant, right? They're not like
Hmm.
everywhere, but they are like the Federation, right? You'd visit a random planet in the Federation and they would mention, oh, yeah, we're part of this Federation, a larger group. You wouldn't have a concept of what the Federation is. It would just be a very innocuous way to introduce that information. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny that it's introduced here. It's one of those little ironies in Star Trek. Um,
Yeah.
so then we get a scene on the ship where like they're going home, and Quark realizes Zek wanted to make this deal and he wanted the deal to fail so that he would have an opportunity to come to this planet and he would be able to investigate the Dominion. But now we have that information that he wants, and that's clearly what he was after. Which it is. Like later on, Quark does talk to Zek about this, and that is the information that Zek wanted. But they were right. He was trying to basically screw over Quark in order to get this information, and now Quark has the information, so he has all the cards.
Hmm.
And of course, while this is going on, Pel's like, Quark, we need to talk. And Quark's like, we are talking. Pel's like, do you want to know why I kissed you? And Quark's like, you never kissed me. And Pel's like, yeah, I did. And he's
That
like,
didn't happen.
no, you didn't. And I don't want to discuss it anymore. Let's just concentrate on the Dominion. And Pel's just like really sad. And it made me sad when like they're like, maybe
Yeah.
it's a planetary alliance or a trading consortium. Like she's almost crying. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, this is one of the reasons I love this episode. Like, despite the fact that I do feel Quark, I know I said I wouldn't say it anymore, but despite the Quark being as underpowered and Pell is like kind of like shows up and does all the work, Pell is really endearing. The actress does a great
Yeah.
job. I'm pretty sure it's an actress. I guess technically you could have presented a male in all this makeup and I wouldn't know the difference, but the actress does a really great job, and uh, like I really do feel for her in this scene. She's like, I mean, obviously, like she was trying to explain that she's a female before. She was trying to like express her love. I also think like she probably should have explained that she's a female in this scene, but she probably feels so rejected. She's like, yeah, it's probably best to just drop it.
Hmm.
And they arrive back, and Quark is talking with Zek, and Quark calls him out on it. It's like, I know what you were really after. You want to know about the Dominion, and Zek is like, what have you found out? He's like, no, you go first. Uh, and Rom is trying to talk to Quark the whole time because Rom's trying to tell Quark about Pell.
Yeah.
But
Not
Quark just
now.
keeps dismissing him.
Wrong.
Not now, Rom.
Hmm.
And Zach explains that look, he's only ever heard whispers of the Dominion, but he hasn't been able to get any tangible information until now. At which point Quark is like, "Well, I can arrange you a meeting with a powerful member within the Dominion." And Zach is like, if you do that, I'll give you a percentage of every Ferengi opportunity in the Gamma Quadrant, which is like, holy
Hmm.
shit! Like any deal made in the Gamma Quadrant, you now get a cut. That's a pretty big fucking deal.
Yeah.
So then Quark gives the information, and then finally he's like, all right, Rom, what do you want? And we get a really funny scene where I wonder if I could kind of play it. Let me see if I can. Let's see if I can play it a little bit. I'm gonna put up the little cover I have, which is just Garrick.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a scene where
Gary.
Rom tells Quark something. Quark makes a gesture. He's like, "Oh, this is unbelievable." And then Pell like is pulled over, and Pell whispers into Quark's ear. Quark freezes, and then he faints and falls on the ground. Uh,
Yeah,
wakes up in the
not a great
infirmary.
day to be Quark.
Yeah, wait, not a great day to be Quark. Wakes up in the infirmary. Missed the wrong thing. Hold on, let's see here. Oh, I screwed everything up. We're good though. Uh,
Hmm.
so, uh, like they wake up in the infirmary, and Rom is basically like, "All right, now we got to go tell the Nagus that Pell's really a female." Uh, and Quark is like, you need to be quiet. Nobody's gonna tell Zek anything. And when Rom's like, "Why?" Quark is like, it's like because it's against the it's against a woman, it's against the law for Ferengi law for a woman to wear clothes, try to earn profit, or even quote the sacred rules of acquisition.
Or give
um
advice, like for a Ferengi male to take business advice.
oh yeah, for a
That's
Ferengi male to take business advice is illegal, which is like, damn. Like, we mentioned before, they're like hyper sexist. They're hyper sexist. It's almost, again,
yeah.
this is like the more satirical element right now of the Ferengi, right? This is like hyper comical of like what's the extreme of like sexism, right? It's these sorts of
Mm-hmm.
things where you basically just like you actually like, because remember, Pell is super competent, right? So it's actually like a
Mm-hmm.
crime that she's not allowed to use that competence.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that you notice is Quark is very reserved. Like all his shock is gone, and he's very quiet in this scene. And he keeps trying to tell like Rom to be quiet. And Rom's like, "You're scaring me, brother. Could it be that you have feelings for this female?" And Quark's like, "Of course not. Don't you see? If Zek learns that I've been deceived by a female, I'd be ruined. He would never trust me again." And he's like, "But you have to tell, otherwise you will be like, punished just as much as her." Uh, and Quark's like, "Forget about me. Uh, Shut up and don't tell anybody about this, and I will give you the bar." Uh, which that should be a shock to everybody because Quark loves that bar. But
Yeah.
something is odd. Again, something's odd about the scene. He's very quiet. Like Quark is not like panicked. He's not like the rest of the episode where he's like panicked about his own life. Uh, so he basically says like, "Look, uh, who needs the bar when I can have the Gamma Quadrant? I'll transfer ownership immediately, but only on one condition: that you never mention the truth about Pell to anybody." And then Rom's like, "Pell, what about him?" like that sort of joke comment. And now we're at my favorite scene. So Quark goes to Pell's
Mm-hmm.
quarters, and Pell is like, not wearing her coat, so you can see her breasts, see her. She's not wearing her ears, like, so she looks 100% like a Ferengi female. And Quark is very uncomfortable looking at her.
Mm-hmm.
He says like, "Where are your lobes?" And she's like, "Over there." He's like, "Well, put them on before somebody sees you." And she's like, "Look, no one's gonna see me." He says, "Put them on now and wrap yourself up. Have you finished packing?" At which point she does relent, and she does like put on the clothes and put on the lobes. But this is something I like that's really interesting about like how Quark is reacting to her. He is uncomfortable seeing, like, it's almost like, and we'll get to it. He doesn't like the fact that a female is good at business because it kind of undermines his view of Ferengi culture. That is, I think, the reading here is like, even looking at her undermines his beliefs. So he doesn't
Mm-hmm.
want to look at her as a female. He wants to look at her as a male.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, she puts it on, and he's like, "Look, you don't work for my bar anymore. You're not my partner anymore. We're done." He holds out like this box, and she's like, "What is it?" He's like, "Look, it's 10 bars of Latinum to help you start a new life. If you're going to pretend you're a man, act like one, take the profit, and leave." So that's another thing that's interesting, right? Is Quark is uncomfortable with the fact that Quark is sexist, right? Like no denying that. He is uncomfortable with a female, like being like talking about profits. He's uncomfortable with a woman wearing clothes, right? All this is uncomfortable for him, but he's not going to rat Pell out. In fact, he's going to give Pell a lot of money and allow Pell to go keep doing what she's doing, but just somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
Yeah.
such an interesting thing to explore about his character because it's like he's looked past the sexism and realizes Pell is a person who has this skill, who deserves to be out there. I don't like it. It's against my culture, but I'm not going to get in the way of it. But I can't be near it. it's a very interesting
Right.
read of his character because we especially with stuff we later learn, Quark is a again die hard for his culture. Flaws and all,
Mhm.
right? He loves the Ferengi culture. Uh, in a lot of ways, he is the Ferengi version of Garrick. He is in love with his culture
Mhm.
to such an extent that you cannot turn him against it, no matter what. And
Mhm.
but at the same time, he recognizes, it's the, not the humanity, it's the Ferengi, but the humanity in Pell that he's not going to subject Pell to a life that she does not want to live.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really good.
Like
And
just
there's a line that she says. Hold on, let's see. Uh, she says, "I love you, Quark. I know that you care about me. Admit it." And he says, he turns away from her at this point because again, he can't even like look at her with like half the stuff going on. Uh,
mhm.
and he says, like, "What difference does it make if I do? You'd never be happy as a Ferengi wife." And she's like, "Then come with me to the Gamma Quadrant. No one cares if I wear clothes or not." He turns around and he says defiantly, "I'd care."
I don't care.
And at which point she's
Yep.
like, "Then I guess I gotta go." And he's like, "I guess so." Uh, I mean, that's just that is such a character defining like line for Quark. Is again, he is happy with her going away and doing what she needs to do and being who she wants to be. He doesn't want to get in the way of that. But at the same time,
Mhm.
even if he did want to marry her, he doesn't want to go
He
against
can't.
his own culture. He can't. He doesn't want to go against his own culture. He believes
Yeah.
it's so against his culture. It's not. It's almost like it's a weird way to say it. It's almost not like sexism because
Mhm.
it's not like you're treating like a sex all one way and generalizing based on sex. It's more in the sense of like this is an aspect of my culture, like my language, like my way of dress. This is how we view women. This is how we view men. That's it. It like
Mhm.
it would be the same thing. Like if you like altered like the writing in Star Trek and women were regarded as like the better people at business. Quark would be the same as he is now, except if
Mhm.
anyone suggested women were not good at business, he would fight them on that. It's not an
Mhm.
element of sexism, it's an element of he has such respect and devotion to his culture. It still is sexist because the
Mhm.
culture is sexist. I'm not saying it's not, but it's
Yeah.
so much more complicated for the character.
Mhm.
And it's just like the way he delivers the
Yeah.
lines too, or just also does a lot to carry it. It's a matter of you know, he he seems almost disappointed in himself having to say this because he
Mhm.
realizes he's giving up on someone he kind of genuinely cares about. Uh, you
Mhm.
know, I would have loved to see a series where he and her are together and like she has to secretly remain dressed as a male, but they have a relationship that's like secret. I would have loved to see something like that in the series because I think it would have been
Mhm.
very interesting. They could have bounced off each other as like good Ferengi businessman and woman, but that's that like Quark doesn't want that. And here's the thing: this is a spoiler for later. A similar plot lines are kind of explored later in the series with Quark's mom. Quark's mom is a lot like Pell in the sense of she wants to earn profit, she wants to do all this, and Quark and her constantly butt heads because of how Quark views the culture. And
Mhm.
it's so much more complicated than just Quark is wrong, right? It's like you can argue that the commentary is that the culture of the Ferengi people is wrong, but almost not that Quark is wrong for it, right? It's like
Mhm.
I just think it's such a great interpretation of the character. It's such a great like characterization, and going back on it, this is why I don't think you can say the Ferengi are satirical, is because
Mhm.
this is such a nuanced thing for the character. Is he wants her to be happy, he wants her to go, but if he wants to eventually have a good, happy Ferengi wife, and she can't be that, so he can't be with her. But even if it would make him happy, but she's like, oh, but I don't have to be a Ferengi wife. And he's like, it doesn't matter. I have to have a Ferengi wife one day. And
Mhm.
that's it's just the way it is. And he doesn't. He's uncompromising in that, and I think that's a really strong aspect of his character.
Mhm.
And we get to another great scene.
Yeah.
We have the dinner scene with Zek, Rom, and Quark. And let's see. They're talking about their weird foods. And suddenly,
Mhm.
Pell enters the room, and she's like
Uh-oh.
storming over to Zek. And Rom's like, I thought you said she left the station. It's like I thought she did. And Pell's like, I hope you don't mind, Quark, but I couldn't leave without saying goodbye to the Nagus. And Zek is like, Pell, you're a really good businessman. I predict a good future for you, pal. You have the lobes for it. And Pel's like, you like my lobes? And like Quark and like Rom are basically like behind her, like, no, don't do this, you're gonna fuck it up. At which point she like rips her lobes off and throws them at the Negus. And the greatest line
Where?
in all of Star Trek is uttered, where Zek stands up, retreats in fear, and screams, "Ah, it's a female!" Like
No, no,
in
no. It's
almost
not even a full sentence. It's just female. It's like, oh my god. And we're dead. We're going to prison. We're gonna die.
he
They're gonna
does
throw
yell
us
at the
from.
female. This is like you and I have memed this line so much. The way it's shouted is so like hilarious. It's just like a female. Like it's so like it's like it almost sounds like his voice changes briefly. Like it's almost like ADR and how he said it was different. But it's just it's so like I don't know. It comes out of nowhere where it's like you have one Ferengi ripping their fake ears off, throwing them at him, and he just reels back and screams about, "Oh no, a female's here! Oh no, it's a woman! My
Oh
worst
no,
fear!" Like
his
it's so
greatest enemy,
it's
the
greatest
woman.
enemy. Let's see here. And then Rom was like, "Does this mean I don't get the bar?" Um,
Normal day
let's
for
see.
Rom here, folks. Normal day.
Zach's like, what this is outrageous. This is a woman. What she or female that what she's doing here is she's uh like he gets mad at Quark. She's like, leave him out of this. Again, she's defending her man even at this moment. He's like, you dare give me orders? You knew about this all along, didn't you, Quark? And Quark is like, let's see. Pel's like, hey, tell me more about my future, like being sarcastic. And Zek's like, you have no future. I'll see you spend the rest of your life in prison. And Quark, the Chad Quark, like stops his kind of like sniveling, steps in front of the Negus and is like, no. And Zek is like, let me remind you that taking business advice from a female is a violation of Ferengi law. And Quark says, I didn't know she was a female. And Zek says, stupidity is no excuse. Now, one more word out of you and you're going to share her cell. And Quark's immediately just like, then you better make sure it's big enough for three. And Zek's like, are you threatening me? It's like, I wonder what your associates will say when they tell you that you allowed a female to represent your business negotiations. And he says, I didn't know she was female. And Quark's like, stupidity's no excuse.
See your
And
point.
Zek is like, ah, fuck. I see your point.
Yeah.
Pel's identity will remain a secret, but it's gonna cost you. And Quark's like, yeah, my Gamma Quadrant profits. And then like as he's leaving, he just like turns to Pel's like, shame on you.
Shame on you.
Shame on you. At which point Pel's like, look, I'm sorry, but it's time he learned when it comes to accumulating profits, women are as capable as men. And Quark says, well, do me a favor and don't tell anybody else. Pel's just like, look, I should go. I booked passage on Andorian transport. You should come with me. He says, I can't. She says, I know. They share a nice kiss. She's like, well then, I guess if I can't have you, I'll take those 10 bars of gold plus platinum.
Yeah. Just got
Hey,
that Ferengi
hey,
in her still.
yeah. So she is a Ferengi. She likes profit. I mean, it's a great scene. We kind of went over it fast, but it's a fast-paced scene. You have Quark stepping up for her, standing between him and the Nagus, in a small way, going against like the cultural expectations. In a way, it's also to protect himself. But he's again, it's kind of like what he was doing before. He cares about Pel and he wants her to be safe, regardless of his Ferengi values. But he's not willing to compromise himself for that, right? So he wants her to like run away and take the money and keep doing what she's doing. He doesn't care if she's doing what she's doing. And even if the Nagus is gonna get in the way with that, he's gonna step up. And we get a nice scene. Well, it's not a nice scene; it's a bit sad scene. It's like the ending scene. Quark sort of like leans in and starts talking to Dax. And he says, "Hey, you ready for another night of Tongo?" And Dax explains, like, "Haven't you lost enough for one day?" And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about," which is kind of an ongoing thing in this episode where Quark is like plays dumb when he doesn't want to deal with his emotions. And
Yeah.
Dax says, "I'm talking about Pel. She came to see me before she left. I'm going to miss her, and so are you." And Quark says, "You really think I let anyone come between us?" And Dax says, "Nice try, Quark, but I know you better than that." And the episode just kind of ends with like Quark like standing like there sad as the screen just turns to black. Like it's really
Yeah.
sad. It's a really bittersweet ending. This is a great episode. It's just chock full of great like elements of Ferengi culture. Like explores a lot of the character Pell, who I it's a shame we never got her back. Like she's a
Hmm.
character who could have returned regularly. Like there's no reason she couldn't have, right? You know,
Hmm.
she gets in trouble with some Ferengi officer who's on her case, so she has to return to Quark and get some help. You know, Quark needs help with a business deal, so he calls her in to be a silent partner or something like that. You know, there's plenty of ways you could have brought her back. They never did. I don't know if there's a reason for that. Maybe they just didn't have a
Hmm.
story for her. In all fairness, when you were reading some of
Uh,
the details about this episode, you explained that they didn't really view this episode the same way. Like, you know, they didn't
mhm.
view this episode as a big deal, but I think this is a phenomenal episode. I mean, this is like,
Yeah.
go on.
So I was looking into like the character and such and maybe why. So apparently there was a lot of issues with the Ferengi makeup. Hers is less like an allergy to the latex and such. Um, Armin really helped her get used to it, but uh apparently it she discovered through this episode like making it that she was claustrophobic because basically there's like wearing the face like she describes this uncontrollable need to tear my face off as the day wore on almost came overcame me one very
Ooh,
long 14-hour day. In my delusion, I called my then boyfriend and told him that I was very close to pulling my face off. Lucky for me, we lived 5 minutes from the set and he appeared immediately to make sure I did nothing stupid. But I do think the producer was aware that I was losing my mind. As a result of her unfortunate experience, the producers of the show warned future guest stars against auditioning if they had claustrophobia, something that Helene, I think her name is, said like she thought it was a shame and kind of a pity. She had the opportunity, like the character had the potential to recur, but her claustrophobia would make that unlikely. Um, so yeah,
no, I mean, yeah,
it's a
that's really unfortunate for her. And like,
mhm,
yeah, that must have been like, I mean, I can't imagine going through that. I remember, there was like an interview with
mhm,
Jim Carrey when they were talking about him putting on the Grinch makeup for the How the Grinch Stole Christmas movie, and
mhm,
apparently he needed to be taught like either like FBI or CIA anti-torture techniques
mhm,
in order to deal with basically sitting in a chair for 8 hours a day just getting makeup put on him and like not being able to move and not being able to really speak, not being able to do anything for like 8 hours. Like I guess he could listen to music and podcasts or something, but that's it. And
mhm.
like it's just one of those things where it's like I don't know if I could do that. So if you told me like, oh yeah, we need to put you in this makeup for like, it takes 4 hours to get the makeup on, or however long it takes to get on, right? And then
Mhm.
like, what was it, a 16-hour day you said, or a 14-hour day? Just like an insane amount of time. Like, I mean, that's just brutal normally. Imagine having to do it with all that like stuff on your face that you're just like you're
Oh yeah.
basically like breaking down and like have no ability to move because if you do, uh, you know, you're gonna fuck up the set or you're gonna fuck up the scene because like they need you in makeup. So if you rip it off,
Mhm.
it's like that sucks. You know, it's a shame we never got her back, but at the same time, I completely understand why and can't fault her for that at all. Uh, you know, it's a I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe if she was brought back in a book or something, that would have been interesting. But you know,
She was in a couple novellas. Specifically, one is in the Trek Deep Space Nine ebook, Lust, Latinum, Lost and Found. Pell works with Rio Naj, a business associate of Quark, and Talana, who is she plays the main character in the Vulcan Love Slave Volume 3. Apparently, they all three work together to get Quark to help them publish Vulcan Love Slave 6. No, 4. 4. So, yeah. She has other
uh,
adventures, but I'm looking at the Apocrypha. I'm just like, yeah, I don't think that makes sense.
I mean,
For.
it's whatever. Like, I mean, let's be fair. The Star Trek, I don't even like accept certain TV shows within Star Trek to be like canon. Like, I'm not like
Hmm.
dying. I'm not like dying here to like read all the books and stuff like that. Um, but it's a matter of, you know, in Star Trek, uh, like this is a great character. Quark is explored so well, and you know, I think this is probably like I definitely put this up there in terms of like my favorite episodes. A lot of exploration of an
Mhm.
interesting culture and the Ferengi. Again, like as kind of like repulsive as they might be, especially like how they treat women. Essentially, their women are slaves. Like
Mhm.
not even like they're just like they're not allowed to leave the house. They're basically owned. I think we later learned that essentially marriage is a contract between the father of the bride and the husband,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like, yeah, I'll sell you my daughter, for like this amount of latinum, and then like it's like, yeah, I'll pay for your daughter for this latinum because she'll give me kids, and that's basically what a Ferengi marriage is, which is
It's a
like,
rental
okay, yep,
contract.
oh yeah, it's a rental contract. Uh,
Or at least the woo, like carrying the child is a rental contract.
yeah,
The
because it's like the
marriage
males rent the
itself
womb
is
essentially. Ugh.
yeah. The marriage itself is the overarching business like partnership under which the rental contract takes place in.
Yeah,
So.
it's that stuff is obviously super like crazy and silly, to a degree of
Mhm.
like, okay, yeah, I guess it's possible for an alien culture to be this way, but holy shit, is it weird? And let's be fair, I think we only ever meet two Ferengi women, and both of them are like top tier in terms of business. So yeah, but
Mhm.
uh, I think you see they could have done stuff with Pell near the end too, based on what we know what happens to the Ferengi Empire. But that's for another day to talk about. Otherwise, like
Yeah.
great shows all around. I really liked Jadzia in this episode. We only got one scene with him, but Cisco was good. Kira was good. Uh, I mean, just
Mhm.
a stellar show from everyone around. I guess I wish Nog was in this episode, but that's kind of it. Um,
Yeah.
and like again, I have some issues with the episode, but overall, like I wrote down in my notes, I give this an S tier episode. I'm probably gonna say an A. Actually, like in actuality, I do think there's some pretty like sizable problems, but in terms of like not sizable so much as they're pervasive. It's the issue with
Mhm.
Quark, and that's kind of it. Everything else is insanely well acted, insanely well performed, and even more well acted now that I realize that the actress was apparently like essentially experiencing a form of torture for her. So the fact
Mhm.
that she was still able to deliver a pretty great performance all around is impressive and honestly is noteworthy. So all in all, I think that's more or less all I have to say about this episode. I would love to see more
Yeah.
episodes like this, and we get a few more, especially with Ferengi ones. But there's not been a bad Ferengi episode yet. So what's the next
Yeah.
episode we have?
It is Odo's first day. Well, it's basically it's an Odo episode and
Uh,
Kira episode where it deals with them, how they met, and also what Odo's first case on the station was. It's a well, attempted murder mystery. Oh
oh yeah,
no, it's a murder mystery in the past, and then an attempted murder mystery in the present.
well, I mean,
Yeah,
it's a noir. So uh,
yeah, yeah,
but yeah, so the next one episode will be another interesting one. But other than that, I think we're ready to sign off. Any last words, Pike? I will not cut you off. I have not done that in a while.
he's gonna do it. He's gonna do it. The thing is, I have nothing to say, so I'm just making him sit here.
All right, everybody. See you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.